Leadership is doing the right thing, even when you don't want to, but because it's right. It means putting the nation above personal interests. Great example. Back in October 1973, Gerald Ford, a Republican congressman from Michigan, unexpectedly was tapped by President Richard Nixon to be his vice president. Ford was not elected, but chosen. This after Vice President Spiro Agnew quit the vice presidency and admitted to tax evasion. 10 months later, on October 8, 1974, Nixon announced his resignation.
From the discussions I have had with congressional and other leaders, I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
With that message, Gerald Ford became the 38th President of the United States. 1 month later, on September 8, 1974, Ford stunned the nation. He pardoned Nixon for any crimes he might have, but not necessarily committed, against the United States while president. Many were so outraged, critics said it was a corrupt bargain struck between Nixon and Ford. With the pardon sparking outrage, Ford, while not obligated, volunteered to take questions from both Republicans and Democrats.
Mr. Ford, you stated that the theory on which you pardoned Richard Nixon was that he had suffered enough. And I am interested in that theory because the logical consequence of that is that somebody who resigns in the face of virtually certain impeachment, or somebody who is impeached, should not be punished, because the impeachment or the resignation in face of impeachment is punishment enough. And I wondered whether anybody had brought to your attention the fact that the Constitution specifically states that even though somebody is impeached, that person shall nonetheless be liable to punishment according to law.
Mrs. Holtzman, I was fully cognizant of the fact that the President, on resignation, was accountable for any criminal charges. But I would like to say that the reason I gave the pardon was not as to Mr. Nixon himself. I repeat, and I repeat with emphasis, the purpose of the pardon was to try and get the United States, the Congress, the President, and the American people focusing on the serious problems we have both at home and abroad. And I was absolutely convinced then, as I am now, that if we had had this series, an indictment, a trial, a conviction, and anything else that transpired after that, that the attention of the President, the Congress, and the American people would have been diverted from the problems that we have to solve. And that was the principal reason for my granting of the pardon.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, just before we adjourn this hearing, I again would like to commend the President and thank him for coming. I think, Mr. President, that you have probably opened a new era between the executive and the legislative departments, and I am very happy for it.
Mr. Chairman, I want to express to you and to the other members of the committee or subcommittee my appreciation for the fine manner and I think the fair way in which this meeting was held this morning. I felt that it was absolutely essential because I'm the only one who could explain the background and the decision-making process. And I hope, as I said in my opening statement, Mr. Chairman, that have at least cleared the air so that most Americans will understand what was done and why it was done. And again, I trust that all of us can get back to the job of trying to solve our problems both at home and abroad. I thank you very, very much.
To repeat what the former president said, he pardoned Nixon to try and get the United States, Congress, the president, and the American people focusing on the serious problems we have both home and abroad. Now, in my youth, when that happened, I was outraged about the pardon. As years did pass, I realized President Ford was right. We could continue the political partisan fights, or we could turn our attention to the many, many problems facing our nation, like war, economy, and so many more issues. 2 years later, though, in 1976, many still angry about that pardon, President Ford was voted out of office. Then Governor Jimmy Carter moved into the Oval Office. Ford paid an enormous political price for the presidency. So fast forward now to today. Like 1974, most of our news coverage is about Trump's trials, and incidentally, all brought by prosecutors with deep Democratic ties. Let's start with the New York criminal trial. It's a trial on an indictment that does not charge a crime. That is constitutionally defective. Second, the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg ran for office on the campaign to get Trump. Third, the federal prosecutors in New York had reviewed this case before Bragg, and they declined to prosecute. And now let's look at the judge. There are 120 or so judges in the Manhattan court system who could preside over this case. But Judge Juan Merchan refused to recuse himself, despite the fact that his daughter makes her living raising money for various Democratic candidates, including Congressman Adam Schiff. When Schiff was chairman of the House Intel Committee, he almost daily ran to the microphones and provided misinformation to the American people. He claimed to have evidence tying the Trump campaign to Putin. That was false. Schiff is now running for the Senate, and Judge Merchan's daughter is helping him or has helped him. Now, the standard for legal conflict of interest is a very low one. It's actually not the actual conflict of interest, but the appearance of one. A Trump conviction could have a large impact on the judge's daughter's income since she raises money for Trump's political opponents. So he should have passed this trial to another judge. This Trump trial still would have been tried, but before another judge. All right, let's go to Georgia. This was the foreperson of the Georgia Special Grand Jury.
I wanted to hear from the former president, but honestly, I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment.
You can't possibly take her seriously. Yet she had such an important role in the Georgia investigation. It's hard to believe the prosecutors don't have their thumb on the scale when their office throws an ice cream party for these grand jurors. And then after that circus, Fulton County DA Phony Willis hired her lover at county expense and at a very handsome fee, one far exceeding what Willis's assistant DAs make in her office. Why did she pay her lover and not just assign a lawyer in her office? And of course, Willis herself is no stranger to you. Besides running for DA as a Democrat, she gave, at best, disingenuous answers from the witness stand under oath about her relationship with Special Counsel Nathan Wade. At worst, she committed perjury. But no grand jury is investigating her for perjury. So let's go to Florida, where Jack Smith is a special counsel. He was chosen by Attorney General Merrick Garland to prosecute Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents. But before we can get to that, was Jack Smith really the right one to hire? Well, the Attorney General said this.
Mr. Smith is a veteran career prosecutor. He has assembled a group of experienced and talented prosecutors and agents who share his commitment to integrity and the rule of law.
Integrity and the rule of law. Well, here's some background. Back in 2014, Special Counsel Jack Smith prosecuted former Virginia Governor, a Republican, Robert McDonnell, for corruption. He got a conviction. That conviction Smith got was reversed by the Supreme Court. It was unanimously reversed. But it didn't get reversed until after Governor McDonnell's life was ruined. His marriage fell apart, his career ruined, and reports that his legal bills were more than $27 million. So tell me, was Attorney General Merrick Garland, in choosing Jack Smith with this horrible stain on his record, going after a Republican governor, was that the right decision? Does it instill confidence or suggest the system is rigged against fairness? Well, you might also consider this. Special Counsel Smith has indicted Trump for having classified documents after leaving office. Others have done it. Democratic President Bill Clinton, he hid them in a sock drawer. Democratic Secretary of State Hillary Clinton did on an insecure server in her basement. Republican Vice President Mike Pence in his house in Indiana. And of course, President Biden in multiple places. An office building in downtown D.C., his home in Delaware, and in his garage in open boxes next to his Corvette. And curiously, Biden's documents included when he was still in the Senate prior to 2008. And no classified documents should be in a senator's possession outside the secure room in the Capitol, not a senator. Does it seem fair that only Trump is indicted for possessing classified documents? And please, don't split hairs with me about why Trump is different, because, frankly, each leader did violate the law. But regardless of that, I don't think any one of them, the Clintons, Pence, Biden, or Trump, should have been indicted. They're just sloppy. And if they wanted to harm the nation, think about it. They don't need documents. All of this information is classified information in their heads. They've had daily briefings. They've been reading it for years. It's absurd to think any one of them is a traitor. But it's not absurd to think Trump's indictment is political, since he's the only one who got one. Political trials are terrible. They're wrong. And don't forget the Colorado judge and Maine State Attorney General, who both tried to keep Trump off the ballots in those states so citizens could not, if they wanted to, vote for Trump. What happened? The U.S. Supreme Court slapped them down unanimously. It was that obviously wrong that it was unanimous. I don't know about you, but now I've finally had it. Enough of abusing the judicial branch to settle political scores. It's time for President Biden to do the right thing. Channel President Ford by showing leadership and pardoning Trump. And Trump should accept it graciously for the nation. Even with a pardon, it's likely they would both still be kicking and screaming and blaming the other guy. But it really is the right thing to do. We need to end our national nightmare. Politics should be fought at the ballot box.